Yeah. This is my new favorite hat. Just got back a few days ago from seeing Jagged Little Pill on Broadway, and I'm still kind of coming down from the experience because it was all just so surreal and wonderful. I recorded the first video on this channel over a month ago at this point, and when I recorded it, I had not yet seen the show. I had read articles, I'd seen some clips here and there, but I hadn't actually seen the show. I felt like I knew the show. I felt like I had an idea of what the story was. You know, I'd read the synopsis, but it is a different experience to actually get to see it on Broadway. And I should first plug for this hat. Oh yeah, front, Jagged Little Pill, right? Yeah, I feel so cool. Oh, it's my new favorite hat and I'm wearing it everywhere. This is one of many merch items that the stage doorman at Jagged Little Pill, Ernie, custom makes. And his company, Marican Unlimited, and I'll link it below so you guys can check it out. His company has all kinds of stuff that's like Jagged Little Pill and various other Broadway shows. Definitely check it out. Ernie's also just wonderful, and I love supporting him and repping his stuff. So yeah, shameless plug, but very proud of Ernie and feel incredibly lucky to be able to have a hat like this. Just look, it's a second opening post-COVID. Like, you can't get this hat at the merch table inside the theater. Like, you can only get this through Ernie. So yes, definitely check out Marican Unlimited. But yeah, the last show that I saw on Broadway was Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which is actually a play, not a musical, so somewhat different. But I mean, Imogen Heap's music is very, very present in that, so it almost feels like a musical because of just kind of how ethereal everything is. But that was the last show that I saw on Broadway, and this show is very different from that. And in fact, my initial reaction coming into the Broadhurst Theater, which I'd seen pictures of and clips in, and, you know, pictures of the cast on stage as the characters, and it felt very big and very Broadway. But when you're actually in the theater and you're looking at this, you know, blue lit stage that just looks kind of like a cavern that's waiting to be occupied by performers, it was a little bit underwhelming. And I, at first, was concerned about that. I was kind of like, should I be underwhelmed right now? Should I be like thinking this is the best thing in the world? Like, why am I feeling underwhelmed? And I realized it's because the show feels so intimate and personal. It doesn't feel like this big Broadway experience, other than the band and the music of Alanis Morissette that just rocks the house. You know, it's like an intimate, small little play and a rock concert, which is such an interesting combination, and there's a reason it's resonating with people. But because of the nature of the story that's being told, it's very much just about this family kind of going through all this stuff together and trying to communicate with each other and heal their wounds separately at first, and then they realize they have to come together in order to heal their wounds. Hence, like, the theme of the play. The musical, sorry, it's a musical. But again, it feels like a play because it feels very intimate and personal. I think about the other shows that are on Broadway right now: Moulin Rouge, Wicked, The Lion King. These are all like giant shows with all the elaborate costumes and enormous sets, and just they're meant to be this kind of, you know, spectacular. And Jagged Little Pill is just this story about this family in Connecticut going through some stuff. And not to say that the costumes and the sets and the choreography and all of that aren't impressive. Oh my gosh. Larby's choreography in this thing is unreal. The ensemble in this show, the ensemble is the first to take the stage after the band comes on for the overture. And I was sitting orchestra left, and Ren Rivera, who is Lauren's understudy for the role of Joe, they were on my side, and I could see them very well. And they had this look on their face that was almost like you have no idea what you're about to see, and you're going to be in it. And I definitely was. It was infectious to watch that ensemble just gear the audience and pump the audience up for what they were about to witness. And of course, the overture also ends with the little bits from You Oughta Know, which is when Joe comes in. And as soon as Lauren Patton came on stage, as soon as they revealed that Joe was in the midst of all the ensemble, people just went crazy, you know, because they're like, it's Lauren Patton, Tony winner Lauren Patton. And Joe comes out, you know, and comes downstage and is like front and center, just getting everybody pumped, and you are just in it instantly. Like, there's no way to not be giddy about what's to come with that opening overture. It's such an effective overture. And it immediately establishes the whole rock concert feeling of the whole show. And then it just goes from there. I don't really want to go into specifics about the plot because I really try to avoid spoilers in general, and I want people to see the show, so I don't want to give away what happens in the show and then they don't get to see it. But the one plot point that I will talk about is the character of Joe, because that's pertinent to the first video that I made, which if you haven't seen that video, pause and I'll link below to that video. Watch that video first so you have a little bit of context for what I'm about to talk about. But the version of Joe that was on Broadway right before the shutdown was this Mask of Center cisgender woman who was kind of grappling with gender through expression, and particularly through the clothing that she was wearing. There's a scene before the number that I Would Be Good. When Joe comes into the number that I Would Be Good, she's talking to her mom, and she's wearing this like pink cardigan and taking the pink cardigan off and putting on like a hoodie that she feels more comfortable in, putting on her beanie, and just arguing with her mother about, you know, her behavior at the church social they were at or something. And that was like, that exact interaction is something that I fully related to, and I just completely felt seen by that version of Joe who's dealing with gender expression, because I myself, as I'm kind of still going through my own gender journey and figuring things out, haven't got it all figured out just yet. Again, see the other video. Clothing, wardrobe is a big part of that. It's a big part of me figuring out how to express myself. And I mentioned that this is my new favorite hat. Growing up, I was a huge tomboy and I played sports, and I had a lot of baseball hats that I would wear on the regular. It was kind of a go-to look for me. As you get older, as you get into like your teenage years, and there starts to be a lot more heteronormative expectations for what girls wear, what girls do, what guys wear, what guys do. And if you don't want to feel like odd man out, odd woman out, either one, you kind of go with the peer pressure and you go with what you think you're supposed to do. And so I stopped wearing baseball caps, other than when I was working at a restaurant and you need something to cover your head or something like that. It just wasn't something, I didn't want people to think I was a guy. And that was sort of the assumption. I also like to keep my hair short. So it's pretty easy to be misgendered if you have short hair and you have a baseball cap on and you don't wear a lot of makeup. I mean, that's just what it is. But as I've been embracing my Mask of Center identity, I'm less worried about that. I'm just sort of like, well, this is what I feel comfortable in. This is what I feel like looks like me, what I think I look good in. And I'm just going to wear it, and I'm not going to worry about what other people think. And so getting this hat and having like a new favorite hat that this is like a baseball cap, it's almost like kind of like the next step in that process of acceptance or whatever. So I love it for all of the reasons, for everything, all the memories that come with how I got this hat. And those are way more important than any kind of shame that I could possibly feel about someone thinking that I'm a guy. So yeah, so that's, as I said, so the clothing part of Joe's gender expression was something I really, really resonated with. And that wasn't really as much of an aspect of that character in this new version. In this version of Joe, the dialogue that's specifically about Joe being gay or things about Joe's sexuality or queer identity, all of that, have kind of been taken out and replaced with more ambiguous dialogue about identity. It's again very much more ambiguous than it had been, and I think that this is the right direction to go. Like, even though I didn't resonate as much with this version of the character, I think that what they've done with the dialogue to make it even more ambiguous is the right direction to go, because I think it allows for more people to project what they want to onto the character and interpret that character in whatever way they want to, so it's not as cut and dry in any identity. And it opens it up also for the other actors who come in to play that character and to tailor that character to fit, you know, their identity and their own journey. So in the dialogue that happens before Joe comes into her verse in That I Would Be Good, the interaction with her mom is like, is it just about attention? Are you just trying to get attention? And then Joe's like, no, actually I want less attention. And, you know, again, getting that perfect little bit of snark in there for the amount that Joe is this character full of insecurity and vulnerability. What comes out on the surface is snark, and it's very clear that she's masking that. And Lauren balances those two emotions really, really well. That is a part of Joe that I definitely still resonate with, is like using sarcasm to kind of hide how insecure you're feeling, how vulnerable you're feeling. And because I resonate with a lot of things that Lauren Patton has talked about her own struggles with gender, particularly in the conversation between her and Shakina and Afak. And again, I can link that below as well, because I want everybody to see that video. I resonate with a lot of things she was saying in that, and because of that, I feel like, since I don't really resonate with this version of Joe as much, I'm guessing she doesn't either. And again, I'm just projecting that. That could not be the case at all. But I also want to say that I'm very impressed with the way that she made this character believable and still felt authentic, even though it wasn't something that was as personal to her own journey. And I like that she and the writers and everybody was willing to modify the character to try to speak to more people and try to be more inclusive of all the different gender experiences people are having, gender journeys people are on, to create more ambiguity around that character so more people can interpret what they need to. I do think that the people who are upset about the character not being trans or non-binary, I think that this is the opposite direction from where they want that story to go, and so they probably will still be upset about it. But I think that this is the direction that creates the most space. It's widening that gray area and creates the most space for people to be able to see themselves in that character. So, good job, production team, because I think you did a good job. And I'm saying that as someone who doesn't resonate as much with the character in this version. I'm totally fine with that, because I want this character to reach as many people as possible. And just because I don't resonate with this character in the same way or as much doesn't mean that another person didn't just all of a sudden now see themselves in the character. So I think you're doing a good job. If anybody from the production team sees this, good job. I liked what they did with Joe. I think that it was just enough. I don't think they went too far with it. And I think that Lauren did a really good job of playing this version. So yeah, I'm into it. You go into musicals a lot of the time knowing the music because the album is accessible and you can listen to all the songs, and Alanis Morissette's music is iconic, and hearing Tom Kitt's orchestrations of those songs in musical theater form is always enjoyable, and that album is just awesome. But you don't get the dialogue and the context for a lot of the storylines going on, so I came into it thinking that I knew the show, thinking that I was just watching something to see it live, but that I knew everything. But I really didn't. I really had no idea about a lot of stuff. Not necessarily plot-wise, because I'd read the synopsis, but there's a difference between knowing the plot and actually listening to Diablo Cody's book come to life and hearing the lines of dialogue and seeing the interactions between characters, the dynamics that develop. For example, when I heard that Kathryn Gallagher was nominated for a Tony, I was kind of surprised by that because she's technically an ensemble member, or as close to an ensemble member as can be, and has like 1.5 solos and then a little bits in other songs. And so I was kind of surprised that she would get nominated for a role like that, because it didn't seem like she was a very big character. And then I saw the show. And let me tell you, again, I don't want to tell you anything about the plot. I think that most people watching this probably know the plot, and you can look up the synopsis and know what happens. But basically, something intense and traumatic happens to her, and she's kind of working through it, processing it, trying to figure out how she's reacting to it. And the scene where she's talking to Joe and Frankie have come to check in on her and want to talk to her about what happened. And the vulnerability that Kathryn Gallagher is able to get in touch with in that scene and in some of the other scenes in the show, yeah, she absolutely deserved that Tony nomination. She is an incredible actress, and I, facepalm that I ever doubted that. I just didn't know, because I'd only heard the music, and she has a great voice. Predator is just incredible, but I just was like, she only has one song, really, kind of 2 songs. But yeah, no, Kathryn is fantastic, and everybody in that cast is fantastic. I know I already talked a little bit about Lauren, but everybody who believes that Lauren deserved the Tony usually goes to, have you seen her performance of You Oughta Know? Which, by the way, yeah, seeing that live is incredible. Seeing that live and seeing her do that howl that comes right before the bridge live is unreal. And I don't know how she musters the strength and the power to do that every show, but yeah, it's something special. And so I knew that she had the vocal chops to earn a Tony nomination, to earn a Tony Award. But her acting, that is where it's at, because Lauren Patton has been doing theater for years. And this is the first time I've seen her do anything stage acting. I've seen a couple of her like TV stints on like Blue Bloods and whatnot. But stage acting is different, because stage acting means that if you're on stage, everybody can see you. Even if you are not the focal point of the scene, people can still see you. And you have to be really careful about not, zoning out. You have to stay in character the whole time, and you just have to really commit and be in it. And this is where Lauren Patton excels. I have learned from seeing her in this show, because I'll just mention one, because again, I don't want to give too much away, and people should just go see it for themselves to get to witness it. But in That I Would Be Good, since I already talked a little bit about That I Would Be Good, I'll talk about that, because after Jo has had this interaction with her mom, Jo comes in with her line, her lyric in the song, and as she's walking across stage, Lauren is walking across stage to get to her mark, where she's gonna sing the majority of the song. And I was sitting orchestra left, as I said, and so I was in a really good position to be able to see everything that was happening. And Lauren is visibly trembling as she's singing, but also as she's just kind of walking as the other people are singing, and she's kind of processing everything that's happening. And it was so real and raw to witness. That I Would Be Good is the song that resonates the most with me, and it was the performance that I was looking forward to the most. But that was more than I could really handle, because it was just so raw and so real. Because Lauren was trembling the whole time, there were also these moments where she would just take these like deep breaths, and as Jo, it could be about Jo's just trying to like stay calm and be in the moment and not be too anxious about the conversation she just had with her mother and how much she doesn't understand and all that. But in reality, what's also probably going into that is that Lauren is kind of readying herself to belt in a little bit, because that is a song that is not just like, oh, we're just singing a nice little song. There are some really intense belting moments in that song. So watching that number was just, everything that Lauren did in her performance as Jo, you could see how much she both, is probably projecting her own stuff onto the character in the way that she's bringing her own stuff to the performance, and her own inner stuff is coming out in even just like the mannerisms and some of the like the gait in the way that Jo walks, and it's really cool to see how that evolves as Jo gains agency throughout the show, so that by the end, when we're in the finale, and we've talked about how much finale Jo actually wants to be seen and is kind of feeling herself, and has that great line about like, my sex appeal is off the charts, and this is like the kind of joke that it both fits the Jo that we've seen because it's snarky, but it's also specifically about self-confidence that Jo has gained. And so it's again an evolution of that character to be able to joke about something that's about how good she feels about herself. I think that's a really cool script moment. That's the line that Jo gets towards the end. That's sort of the last line that we see Jo speak. I think it's very fitting for what that character's gone through to come out on the other side and still have that kind of jokey, snarky personality, but you can tell that there's a difference in the way that she carries herself and how she feels about herself. So even though this version of Jo with the more ambiguity, it didn't resonate with me as deeply as the previous version that Lauren Patton was playing, I still think that it does what it needs to do, and I think that it will speak to hopefully a wider audience of people because of the expansion of that gray area and the ambiguity in the character. It was so cool to finally get to see this show and to see it live, to be in a theater with people. I will say that the one disappointing thing that happened was I was in an audience that did not give a standing O to Lauren after You Ought to Know. And I didn't know that those existed because I thought that I had been promised a lengthy standing ovation for Lauren Patton, for Tony winner Lauren Patton, after You Ought to Know. And I stood up immediately and I was clapping and I looked around and there were, 10 or so people who also were standing and clapping, and everybody else was sitting down. Now, they were clapping, like they were very enthusiastic clapping from their seats. But I was frankly embarrassed to be in a crowd that had not stood up immediately. And, Lauren and the rest of the ensemble are standing on stage, and I'm still standing up and hoping that other people will stand up. And within like a minute, the lighting cue signaled that they move on to the next scene. And I was like, well, that was the chance, and I didn't get it. So that was disappointing, but just means I need to see the show again. I want to see the show again to see all the different interpretations of all the characters that are possible from this show. I think about, the Australian cast was announced a few weeks ago, and Maggie McKenna is going to be playing Jo, and Maggie McKenna is non-binary, and so it'll be really cool to see how they interpret the character and what changes in the dialogue so that their own gender journey is reflected in that character. So I think that's really exciting. But, even any of the characters, I think that there's a lot of possibilities for what Jo can be, but I think there's possibilities to tell other versions of Bella's story, or other versions of Nick's story, of other versions of MJ. I saw Heidi Blickenstaff play MJ, which was not the original cast. That was not Elizabeth Stanley's version. But Heidi Blickenstaff was hilarious as MJ, and I'm not saying that Elizabeth Stanley isn't. I haven't seen that version, so I don't know. I can't speak to that. But I was not expecting to laugh as much at some of the asides and the expressions that Heidi Blickenstaff had playing MJ. This show has so much potential to reach so many audiences about so many different things. And I love that the producers have kind of created this space. And I think what's really cool is that this show starts a lot of conversations. I think that even though there are storylines that are wrapped up, that there are resolutions in this show for the characters, because it is a show, and so you've got to have resolution. I think what it really does is it opens conversations for people to start a dialogue with each other after the show about the things that they resonated with. And I think that every time you go see this show, you're going to resonate with it differently based on where you're at in your life and the different things that you're struggling with. Or, you know, depending on who you go see the show with, that could also change depending on the dynamic there, depending on if they feel seen by the show in a different way than you do, and you can kind of talk about that. I just think it's really a conversation starter. There is some mature subject matter, so I don't know that it's for the kiddos, but definitely teens and older will be able to resonate with this show. And I think it's an important show for people to see, especially during a time when we're all still cooped up and we're making the space to get to know each other a little bit better and try to understand each other. And I think this show does a really good job of creating a space for that kind of empathy and understanding. And it does it through some really awesome rocking music. And I think it's really cool that music and art can have this kind of impact on people and can help people feel seen and give people representation, validation, affirmation about their own experiences, about their own identity. I think this show is so special, and I hope that it runs for so many years so that we get to see all kinds of interpretations of these characters and people get to find themselves in this show in the way that I've felt that I've been able to find myself. It's a very personal thing for me. I'm very biased to this show because I've felt so seen in a way that I don't think I knew was possible. And I want everybody to get the chance to have that sense of validation, not necessarily through Joe, just happens to be the character that I resonate with. I also resonate with Nick and the perfectionism that he feels is required of him in order to not disappoint his family. You know, that's something I also resonate with. Perfect is a song that also strikes a chord whenever it comes on. But yeah, I think everybody can find something in this show that clicks. And I think it's an important show. So, yeah. I don't really have a sign off just yet, but if you like this video and you want to hit the little thumbs up, that'd be nice. And if you really like this video and you want to see other videos that I put on this channel, you can hit the subscribe button and you'll become one of my subscribers. It's a very elite bunch right now, and by elite I mean it's very small right now, but it will grow. This is only my second video on here, so I'm still learning a lot about how to do this thing, but I actually recorded an almost similar length video before this without my mic plugged in. So, like I said, still learning. I just want to I want my channel to be a place for positive critique. I really want it to be a place where we just kind of have some positive, constructive dialogues. You know, I definitely encourage people, if you want to contribute something, you know, go ahead and write something in the comments, and I try to reply to those because I like to get that conversation going down there as well. So feel free to write in the comments. And so yeah, I think that's enough for this video. Basically, just if you have a chance to go see Jagged Little Pill, I would encourage you to, because I think it speaks to a lot of people, and I think that it's an important show, and I really want it to last and run for as long as it can so that we get to see the evolution of this show as it goes, because it's already evolved from where it started, and I think that's really exciting. And I love that the producers are so willing to listen to the fans and modify their process, modify the show to try to speak to more people. There's just there's not a lot of shows that do that, and I want to champion this show and these producers for doing that. And I hope that people can see the positive intent that is there and appreciate the show for what it's doing, because I think that it can be really exciting to see the representation that could come from this, not just from this show, but if this show becomes that doorway into more representation, then other shows will follow suit. You know, I'm very excited for what this could mean for Broadway and for pop culture in general in terms of representation. Let's spread the joy of Jagged Little Pill, spread the angst and the emotion that we're all feeling but don't always know how to address.